My parents kicked me out of the house because I was too poor for their family. 10 years later, they showed up at my door, desperate, begging me to sign a paper that would save them from jail. And you won't believe what was written on that document. My name is Raphael, and this is the story of how my own family threw me away like trash, only to discover years later that I was the only person in the world who could save them. But before I tell you what happened that day they knocked on my door, I need to go back in time. I need to take you to that Sunday dinner, the day that changed my life forever. It was August 2013. I had just turned 23 and was having dinner at my parents' house, like every Sunday. My mom had made lasagna, my favorite dish since childhood. My dad was sitting at the head of the table, as always, reading some news on his tablet. Everything seemed normal, but I knew something was different. They had been looking at me strangely all week. My mom avoided eye contact with me, my dad sighed every time I spoke, and my younger sister, Carolina, who was always the family's darling, had a smile on her face that I couldn't understand. That's when my dad put the tablet down on the table and looked at me. "Raphael, we need to talk." My stomach churned. That tone of voice, I knew that tone. It was the same tone he used when firing employees from his company. "You're 23 years old now," he began, "and your mother and I are concerned about your future." Concerned? That word confused me. I had a stable job as a graphic designer at a small agency. I didn't make much, but it was honest work. I paid my own bills. I had my own car, even though it was an older model. "Dad, I don't understand. Is something wrong?" My mom finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold, almost emotionless. "Raphael, you're not on the same level as us. You understand that, don't you?" Her words cut me like a knife. Level? What level? We were talking about family, not social hierarchy. "Your sister is getting married to the Almeida's son. You know the family. They own 3 car dealerships in the city. They're important people, Raphael. People from our circle." I still didn't understand where this conversation was going, but my heart was already racing. "And we can't have embarrassments in the family," my mom said. The coldness in her voice scared me. "You understand, don't you? You with that artist job of yours, living in that small apartment, driving that old car." "Wait," I interrupted, "you're judging me because I'm not rich? Because I work honestly and live within my means?" "Don't be dramatic," my dad said, irritated. "We're thinking about what's best for the family, our reputation. The Almeidas are going to be part of our family now, and we can't have, well, you at events, at dinners." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents were telling me I was an embarrassment. "So what do you want from me?" I asked, my voice shaking. My dad took an envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table, pushing it in my direction. "You want you to sign this. It's a declaration saying you renounce any family ties with us. In return, we'll give you 50,000 reais, enough money for you to start a new life, far from here." I looked at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. My sister Carolina was smiling openly now. She had always been jealous of me for some reason I never understood, and now she was watching my destruction with joy. "You want to pay me to stop being your son?" I asked, still not believing it. "Don't be so emotional. It's just a paper. You can live your life however you want. We just don't want any more association." I stood up from the chair. My hands were shaking. Tears began to form in my eyes, but I wasn't going to let them see. I wasn't going to let them give that satisfaction. "I'm not signing that," I said. "You're my parents. I'm your son. It doesn't matter how much money I make or what car I drive." My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Then you're no longer welcome in this house. We gave you everything, education, food, shelter, and you repay us by being a failure, embarrassing our family?" Those words echoed in the dining room. My mom said nothing. Carolina was practically glowing, and I realized in that moment that I had lost my family. not by my choice, but by theirs. "Fine," I said, my voice barely coming out. "If that's what you want." I grabbed my jacket and walked to the door. Before leaving, I looked back one last time. "One day, you're gonna need me, and when that day comes, we'll see who's gonna be begging." My dad laughed, a cruel laugh, full of contempt. "We will never need you, Raphael. Never." I left that house and never went back. The first few months were the hardest of my life. I cut all contact with my family. I blocked their numbers, deleted all the photos, tried to erase the memories. But pain doesn't erase that easily. I threw all my anger and sadness into work. I worked 12, 14 hours a day. I took freelance projects on weekends. I taught myself programming, watching YouTube videos until dawn. I studied digital marketing, interface design, everything I could learn for free or almost free. 6 months after that dinner, I quit the agency and started my own web design and development company. It started small, very small. I worked from the living room of my one-bedroom apartment. My first client paid me 800 reais for a simple website, but it was mine. It was my work, my company, my future. 1 year passed, then 2. The company started to grow. I hired my first employee, then 2 more. We moved to a real office, small, but it was ours. Clients started coming through referrals. Larger companies started reaching out to us. In the 3rd year, something happened that changed everything. A tech startup hired us to do the complete interface for their app. The project was big, the biggest we had ever taken on. We worked 6 months straight, day and night, and when the app launched, it exploded. It went viral. In 3 months, it had over 1 million downloads. And that startup referred us to other startups, who referred us to bigger companies, who referred us to even bigger companies. By the 5th year, my company was 40 employees and making over 3 million per year. I was 28 years old and owned one of the fastest growing digital agencies in the region. But even with all this success, there was a hole in my chest that wouldn't close. I had achieved everything on my own, without help from my family, without their money, without their name, and even proving them wrong. It still hurt. It still hurts to this day, to be honest. I never tried to contact them, never tried to find out how they were doing. I blocked everything related to their lives on social media. To me, that family had died at that Sunday dinner. Until, 10 years after that night, my secretary called me. "Raphael, there are 2 people here at reception saying they're your parents. They're insisting on speaking with you." My heart stopped. 10 years? 10 years without a word, without an apology, without anything, and now they showed up at my office? "Send them up," I said, my voice coming out firmer than I expected. I don't know what I expected to see when that door opened, but it wasn't that. My dad, who was always imposing, was hunched over, aged. My mom had deep wrinkles on her face, and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying for days. Both looked like they had aged 20 years and 10. "Raphael," my mom said, her voice breaking. I didn't respond. I just waited.
We need your help," my dad said, and for the first time in my life, I saw him lower his head. He was humiliated, defeated. "Help with what?" I asked, my voice cold. My mom started crying, real tears, not those manipulative tears she used to use to get what she wanted. "We're going to prison, Raphael. We did terrible things, and the only way to escape this is if you sign a document." I leaned back in my chair. I looked at both of them, these people who were once my parents, now begging in front of me. "Tell me everything," I said, "from beginning to end, and if I feel like you're lying, you leave here now and never come back." So they told me, and the story was worse than I could have imagined. After Carolina married the Almeida's son, my dad went into business with his father-in-law. They opened an investment company together. Everything seemed legal at first, but they were just fronts. They were operating a financial pyramid scheme. They promised absurd returns to investors, paid the old ones with the new ones' money. Classic Ponzi scheme. For 5 years, they stole over 15 million reais from hundreds of people. Entire families lost their savings. People lost their homes. An elderly man lost all his retirement money and committed suicide. When I heard that, I felt like vomiting. The federal police discovered everything, opened an investigation, and now everyone involved was going to face criminal charges. My dad, my mom, who was a partner in the company, Carolina's father, and even Carolina herself, who worked in finance. But what do I have to do with this? I asked. My dad took a crumpled paper from his pocket. His hands were shaking. When you were born, your maternal grandfather put a large amount of stock from a company in your name. Since you were a minor, we managed it, but legally, it was always yours. I never knew this. My grandfather had died when I was 5. No one ever told me about any inheritance. Those stocks are worth about 8 million reais today, my mom continued. And according to our lawyer, if you transfer those amounts to a restitution fund for the victims, the public prosecutor's office can make a deal. We would pay the rest in installments, and instead of prison, we would have alternative sentences. I looked at that paper. 8 million reais, money that was legally mine, money they hid from me my entire life, and now they wanted me to just donate it all to save them from the consequences of the crimes they committed? You're asking me to give 8 million reais to save you from jail? I asked, still processing. Please, Rafael, my mom begged, falling to her knees in front of my desk. We made mistakes, a lot of mistakes, with you, with those people, with everything, but we're your family, your blood. My dad also knelt down. I saw tears in his eyes for the first time in my life. I know we were terrible to you. I know we don't deserve anything, but I'm begging you, son, not for us, but for your sister. She has 2 young children. They're going to grow up with their mother in prison if you don't help us. That hit me. My nephews, innocent children who were going to pay for their parents' mistakes. I took the document from my dad's trembling hands. I read every word. It was all true. The stocks existed. They were in my name, and I had total decision-making power over them. Give me a week, I said. I'm going to verify all of this with my lawyer. If it's true, I'll make my decision. They left my office like 2 shadows, broken, destroyed. During that week, I barely slept. My lawyer confirmed everything. The stocks were real, the scheme was real, the victims were real, and I had the power to change the fate of everything. I spoke with the prosecutor on the case. He showed me the victims' testimonies. I read each one. Destroyed families, shattered dreams, ruined lives because of my family's greed. I could simply let them go to prison. That would be justice, right? They deserved it. They kicked me out of the house for being poor. They treated me like garbage, and now they wanted my help? But every night I thought about those 2 boys, my nephews I had never met, children of 6 and 4 years old who were going to grow up with their mother behind bars. On the 7th day, I made my decision. I called my parents back to the office. They entered with the same destroyed appearance. I think they didn't sleep at all during that week. I'm going to sign, I said. My mom let out a cry of relief. My dad put his hands on his face and started crying. But there are conditions, I continued, and they fell silent. First, you're going to work for the rest of your lives to pay back every penny to those victims. Second, you're going to do community service. Third, you're going to sell everything, the house, the cars, the jewelry, everything, and the money goes to the restitution fund. They nodded quickly, desperately. And there's a last condition, I said, looking into both their eyes. I want to see my nephews. I want to be part of their lives, not as a rich uncle who gives gifts, but as a real uncle, because they're not to blame for any of this. My mom was trying so hard she could barely speak. Yes, yes, whatever you want. I signed the document right there. 8 million reais leaving my account. The money that could have changed my life 10 years ago when I needed it most, the money they hid from me. But I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing it for the victims, for the families they destroyed, and for the 2 innocent children who didn't deserve to grow up without their parents. Today, 3 years later, My family is rebuilding their lives. They live in a simple apartment. They work regular jobs. They pay the installments religiously. And every week, I see my nephews. I take them to play soccer, to get ice cream, to the movies. Carolina apologized to me, crying. It took me a year until I could truly forgive her. But we're trying. My parents, well, it's still complicated. I think it always will be. Some wounds don't heal completely. But I learned something important from all of this. Family isn't about last names or money or social status. It's about being present when it matters. It's about making the right choices, even when they're the hardest. I could have let them rot in jail. A lot of people told me I should have done that. And sometimes, on difficult nights, I wonder if that's not what I should have done. But when I see my nephews laughing, playing, growing up with their family around them, I know I made the right choice. Not for them, but for me, because I didn't want to become the same cold and cruel person they were to me. The money? I made it back in 2 years with my company. Today, I make over $10 million per year. I have offices in 3 cities, over 100 employees, and everything I built alone, without their help, without their money, without their name. And that's the real inheritance my grandfather left me. Not the $8 million in stocks, but the lesson that character is worth more than any fortune, and that sometimes helping those who hurt you isn't weakness, it's the greatest strength you can have.